Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to every one of you all. This is James Karanu, aka OJ. I am back again, and here we are demystifying some of esports content and also talking about news and various things within the esports world that have meaning to us. So here today we are going to be reacting to a video by The Score Esports. I'm sure most, if not all of you, are familiar with that YouTube channel. If you don't or aren't, kindly subscribe. Giving them free fandom. We're talking about the secret language of esports. So let's check this out.
Comms in general aren't just words. They're a language. And like all languages, they adhere to a logic. Sometimes that logic is straightforward, though that doesn't always matter.
Please, chicken coop. Chicken coop! Chicken fucking coop! Toots, where do you play?
Other times, that logic is kind of weird. This adorable little door on Lotus is called Hobbit because it resembles the entryway to a humble abode in Hobbiton. This cubby under the red stairs on Cafe is called Harry Potter.
Harry
because
Potter,
that's
yeah.
where Dursleys forced the little wizard lad.
Yeah, and I know that because I was a Rainbow Six semi-professional player, so yeah.
To live. This pillar on Overpass is sometimes called Dildo because, well,
Alright, colourful call-out spot names for it.
Why do
is
they
that
call it
comms
that?
are sort of these sociological entities that abide by certain rules, and once you start digging into those rules, you find secrets. Not just to making you a better player, but to helping you understand the history of esports as a whole. Whether namesakes or just vestiges of a bygone age, gamers have spent decades devising organic yet off-the-cuff methods for conveying crucial information in the heat of battle.
Yeah.
Bomb planet, sir. Hold on before me.
Oh, he's in the tube.
Oh, fuck.
Tube not clear?
Tube dead. Tube not clear.
Because sometimes comms alone can determine the outcome of that battle.
Clear comms win games, and cluttered comms will lose you games.
So let's get into the weeds, see what the experts
And even just before we continue, excuse me, need to see something. Anywho, guys, it's fine.
have
Let's
to
just
say,
continue.
and figure out once and for all how to stop saying, he's over there.
Oh man, the worst call out in esports professional team-based sports history. He's over there. If you hear someone say something like that, man, it can make you alt tab out of the game. Like seriously.
Okay, so this might seem like a silly thing to ask, but to start, what exactly constitutes comms? Because by traditional definitions, it's this.
Go, go, go.
But by others, it's this.
You guys smoke weed by any chance?
Yeah. Smoke hella weed. Why?
Hell yeah, dude. You trying to smoke right now during the timeout?
Yeah, I'll hit a sesh with you. What's going on?
And yet the complication doesn't end there. You see, the word itself can refer to two different things. On the one hand, you've got the verbal or
No
textual
comments.
act of delivering comms, which is an old military shorthand for communications. But on the other, you've got the things that they are communicate, which in the context of esports are typically referred to as callouts. And
Yeah.
to muddy things even further, comms is itself a callout. If you're in voice chat in the middle of a round and someone abruptly says comms, it's a signal for everyone to stop talking because the person who said it needs to be able to listen to a sound.
Yeah,
Now, in spite
yeah.
of everything I just said, the point of this video
Definitely.
isn't to confuse you. It's to help you wrap your head around not only the genealogy, but the application of comms, callouts, and everything in between. So, to start, what are callouts? In simplest terms, callouts are culturally established names for things, usually places, positions, and practices, that are easily conveyed and readily recognizable. There are three things that make for a good callout. The first is specificity. Don't say the enemy player is outside if you know that they're on silo, hiding boxes, or tucked Africa.
One enemy remaining. Last player standing.
Spawn is such a bad callout. He's in spawn. Okay, which one?
The second is brevity. Instead of calling this big-ass shipping container a big-ass shipping container, we call it red. Why? Because it's red. And because red is a monosyllabic three-letter word that's just really easy to say.
What wasn't
Yeah.
ever really spoken, but everyone understood is the shorter the call out is, the better it is for the communication. And
Yes.
so we would be like, oh, it's a lot easier to say red pistol than top red power up.
My favorite illustration of this is actually in Rainbow Six. You see, unlike in Counter-Strike or Valorant, the bomb in the bomb defuse game mode in Siege isn't actually a bomb. It's a diffuser. The attackers are diffusing a bomb that the defending team has already planted. I know, it's ridiculously counterintuitive. The point is that diffuser is kind of a confusing and cumbersome word to start screaming out in the heat of the round. So instead, players came up with a better name, case. The third is universality. One of the reasons short or long are such great callouts is because they apply to multiple sites on multiple maps across multiple esports. Same with CT. The call is so pervasive that it even made its way into Valorant in the early days of the beta. What's cool is that as players started to become more aware of these best practices, so too did mapmakers. Instead of just designing generic, indistinguishable areas, they would design areas with idiosyncratic features that could lend themselves to callouts. It is not a coincidence, for instance, that this connecting room on Ascent contains a tree and is called that. The inspiration for this almost certainly came
Very
from
nice.
Cash, since one of its co-designers, a legendary CS pro named Volcano, is also a co-lead designer on Valorant, and because Ascent is just generally a carbon copy of Cash, which is why it's the only good map in Valorant. Some call
the sneaky jabs. Very nice. And I think most of you can actually relate, especially in the professional space. Very, very true. It has to be brief. It has to be very specific. It has to be relatable. So
callouts are earned by way of an infamous or iconic play. The reason we refer to this ratty-ass boost on Cash
As
as
Shroud.
Shroud is because that's where once upon a time Shroud got a
Shroud
little
was
rowdy.
boasted, yeah.
Set piece out. Shroud has let them all pass. 1, 2, 3. Oh, Taze is the last one alive. Oh, that is tight. They're going to every time.
And these types of callouts are everywhere in esports. This spot on Old Train is called Olaf. This spot on Oregon and the spot on Cafe are both called Shaiko. This ramp on Midship is called Gandhi, and this corner on Sanctuary is called Walshy. And this really annoying cubby on Ascent is called Sabrosa.
He's gonna spot all of them right now. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh my God. Looking for the ace right now, and it's about to be peeked out here. Silver arrow to come out, and he's gonna win this fight. And he does with another headshot.
I actually retired 5 players in that position. Your favorite players, Asuna, all that. Dicey, I retired them.
But this doesn't just apply to positions, it also applies to practices. Dota OGs will remember the so-called Arteezy block, where you'd stand to the left of the middle tower the second the first wave spawned because it displaced creeps into a straight line. And Halo players still call the act of crouching while in midair to make you harder to hit Gandhi hopping. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that callouts will inevitably vary from region to region and even roster to roster, especially in the time before online play.
What happened is because there was an Xbox Live, you would have different callouts per region of the United States. Then as we would go through these tournaments and we would play and we would mix up teams, we started coming up with new callouts for things. Pits, graveyards, and tombstones, or stones to abbreviate. That was kind of like the meshing of all the different personalities coming together and saying like, oh, this is what you mean when you say this.
Once an esport becomes big enough that it forges its own cultural identity, it'll start to develop its own idiosyncratic terminology. You'd never say proxying in Counter-Strike, for instance, nor would you play for picks in Rocket League or go for a ceiling shot in StarCraft. Callouts can also persist despite becoming obsolete. We still call this boiler room because there used to be a boiler in there, even though it was later removed in Go. Same with car, grill, and most obscurely, Moto.
Under this bridge, there was a graffiti that said WVU Moto on it. This is because the 1.6 professional player Moto helped test out Inferno and make sure that it was up to snuff and a good competitive map.
This room on the pit will always be called Sword Room, even though MLG got rid of the sword eons ago. And in case you're wondering, yes, Colton is making me throw all of these Halo references in here. Needless to say, callouts are a really big part of esports, but comms are what make esports tick.
Hey, get back bottom, get back bottom, get back bottom, get back bottom. Like, I'm so sure they're going for something there. I got you covered by the way, TJ. Okay.
Saying the wrong callouts, that's pretty straightforward.
Is Kargar's like hero now? Yeah. Ash is in garage.
As is saying too many callouts.
Yeah,
Oh my.
Hello! Okay, no throw.
Second. What's their record?
Where someone is.
Hold up. What happened? What happened there?
Okay, no throw.
Second. What's their record?
Yeah, it's 2-1. Yeah, they've been destroyed. Probably the only one they won was this one.
Where someone is, where someone isn't, what you're doing, where you're going, where your opponent could be going, as well as their HP, current weapon, and utility. Whether you're covering your teammate, whether you're not covering your teammate. All of these and more are comms. And they could very well be the most integral tool to your arsenal.
The more information you have, the better, decision you can potentially make ultimately, right? And so the really good teams would always give you these tiny little bits of feedback, which was just, hey, here's where I spawned, this is where I'm going. And that shows intent. And then you layer that in with the coach, which is like rockets are up. And then if a player was like, I'm gonna push long haul, you'd be like, no, we gotta get rockets. And then you would see him move.
I think one thing you can rely on always is communication. So it just helps raise the floor of a team, regardless of how your aim is on that day or not, whether your aim is on its A level, B level, C level. Your comms, honestly, can always be on A level.
So how do you ensure that your comms are always up to snuff? Well, this is a big question that competitors have been grappling with for literally decades, which means they've accrued some hard-fought wisdom along the way. And to exposit that wisdom, We need Colton.
And now, the guy who actually knows what he's talking about.
Am I a professional gamer? No. But as somebody who grew up on the mean streets of Xbox Live playing Halo 2 and 3, I learned early how to call out. But communicating well is orders of magnitude more difficult and requires a deeper understanding of both the game and your teammates. Normally, I'd turn to some scientific research and some sciencey people, but today the experts we're going to lean on are coaches. And I'm going to nerd out specifically about Halo coaches since they talk throughout the game and have been shaping communication at the top level since 2006. Thankfully, I got the chance to sit down with Scott Gandhi-Lucier, a former member of Team Carbon, specifically in 2006, when they brought in Triple X, popularizing coaching in the Halo scene.
When you're a professional team, even though you're teenagers, you have to have the ability to self-evaluate. You need to understand like what's your strengths, what's your weaknesses, and how do you get better. And for us, if you look at the entire 2005 year, it was, we blew St. Louis badly. We were up 42-28 against SDK, which would eventually turn into final boss, and we lose that game because we couldn't regroup, because we didn't have good enough communication. And then when we were going in 2006, we were like, okay, we need to build around our strengths and say, this is what we're not good at, how can we amplify them? And then bringing in the coach really just solved a lot of those problems up front. Triple X did a really good job of like talking to each of us individually on knowing what to say to us to get us to be our best.
Very much like what you would see from an IGL in CS or Valorant, coaches in Halo are able to help direct the flow of communications to keep people moving in the same direction. Clearly, communication is important, but let's try to pin down what exactly is good communication. My simple working definition to start us off is this: giving your teammates the information they need to make good decisions. Now, let's unpack that a little bit. First, understand why you need to communicate something. If you can't clearly explain why your teammate needs to know that piece of information, then it probably isn't worth communicating.
It's
Second,
not worth it,
what are you actually saying? Are the words and the tone that you're using conveying the information that you think they are? Thirdly, know when to communicate something. Not everything needs to be said immediately, and sometimes we all need to learn when to shut up. And fourth, how you communicate is just as important as what you're saying. Being clear and concise can turn even subpar information into a game-winning decision in the right hands. Ultimately, if you're consistently queuing with teammates and you guys want to get better and win more games, then I recommend sitting down and talking about these aspects. Communication is a conversation. So if you want...
This kind of communication doesn't usually come up when you're queuing, I think online, especially like with stacks, like whether it is 2, 3, 4 like full stack, or 5 stack where the games like Overwatch require 6 and things like that. But
aren't all on the same page, even a perfect communicator is going to be much less effective. But you don't have to just take my word for it. We asked Gandhi and Valens for some tips. So here's some advice from the guys who really know what they're talking about.
Don't call it everything you're doing, because people need to focus on their sound cues on their part of the map. And also, and this happens very often in lower levels, you feel like you're in danger, so the urgency in your comms go up and up and up. Meanwhile, the danger in terms of where the actual action and the round is going to be decided, that is happening away from you. So your communication ends up not mattering to them. It's just extra noise. So pay attention, especially if you're on the come up, to when you're talking too much.
If you treat every game that you're playing as if you are competing, you will have a leg up inside of communication, because you're going to get more laps around the track. Because when you're playing, you're going to develop these habits, whether you like it or not. Like how you practice, it ends up being how you perform. The second one that I would say is find someone you want to communicate like, and then understand how they communicate, and don't even worry about why they communicate that way. Just copy it one-to-one. And when you copy it one-to-one, what will happen is you'll implement it, and then you'll figure out why it works or why it doesn't work for you, and you'll learn from that. And you just keep going like, this is how this person talks. I'm going to do the exact same thing on my side. The third one, this is the most uncomfortable of them, but this is what they had me do in media training. If you can record how you talk and communicate during a match, and then you watch it back, you'll learn more about what was effective and what wasn't effective than anything else you will ever do.
Wow.
Thanks for...
That's actually very powerful. Now that I come to think about that, I think that is something that actually people are taught in communications class. Like, you have to know how to communicate. That's one thing. And there's a lot to package in, especially with what they've talked about. There's the aspect of knowing your teammates. There is the part of knowing like game knowledge or map knowledge, whatever it is that you're trying to tell your teammates. And just a lot. There's a lot of stuff packaged in all that. So it's very, very impressive what these guys are actually talking about. And this was a very impressive, well put out video about esports. They would have literally called it communication in esports. I think that would have been the best title for the video, but secret language of esports is not so bad. Cheers to the score. Thank you so much for that, those tips. If you like that, I'll see you in the next one.